Hey, what's going on, everyone? Well, everyone seems to be talking about Nintendo online and the recently delayed Nintendo Direct and all the announcements and leaks that come out after it, because guess what, people? It's I guess another reminder that these things are planned way in advance, and it's another reminder as to why I personally hate leaks, because you can see that a lot of planning and preparation has gone into the timing of these announcements, and it can greatly affect their reveal and also future chances of success, because people like hype, and if something is revealed or is a pleasant surprise, then in my opinion you're more likely to remember it. But anyway, I'll get into all that stuff at a later date, and thought I'd touch upon just something different. And I'd like to just chat about anything to do with games that I can think of on my channel. I personally have a connection with the East. I love the cultures, the languages, and of course the film and video game industries. So seeing these natural disasters causing untold misery, makes my heart ache. In Japan, love right now to the people of Japan and all those affected. But this also leads me into a discussion about culture and authenticity in games. For those who don't know me, I'm a huge fan of the Tenchu series, especially the very original game on the PlayStation 1, which holds the torch of essentially being the first 3D stealth-focused game of its kind, with other games like Thief and Metal Gear Solid following shortly after. The thing that naturally gripped me about the original Tenchu was, of course, being a ninja, and more importantly, the strong Japanese-themed nature of the game. And not only that, how the game tried to portray what being a ninja was actually like, to a certain extent. Something to my knowledge I had never seen before in video games. Also, the intro to that game, told me that this was, something different than what we'd played before. It was utterly refreshing, and one of those games that, in my mind, you simply had to own, or at least play on the PlayStation 1. And I remember working in electronics boutique at the time, and pushing this game out onto every viable customer I could, describing how you can sneak up behind people and slit their throats, much to the mostly horrified look of the customer. But man, the original Tenchu I utterly rinsed, and to this day it still has one of the best gaming soundtracks ever made, in my opinion. A soundtrack that I've actually uploaded on this channel, so feel free to give it a blast, give it a try. But recently I discovered an article where the original developers and owners of the Tenchu license, From Software, that's right, the Dark Souls guys, spoke about how their new game, Sekiro Shadows Die Twice, initially started off with Tenchu in mind, but as the game progressed, it eventually turned into a new game of its own. Something, as we know, happens a lot in this industry, and can perhaps turn into something new and perhaps even better. A famous example of this comes to mind, this being the story of Nintendo trying to make a two-player F-Zero sequel on the SNES on the Super Nintendo, but they just couldn't get it to work. And out of this experiment, Super Mario Kart was born, and we all know how that ended up. But I mean, Sekiro's Shadows Die Twice looks, absolutely incredible. You can see the elements of Tenchu and Bloodborne and and all their history in this game. And I'll be all over it. My PS4, is finally getting some good use out of it. Even though I do have a backlog of games, I don't know why, man. The PS4 just gets shunned in the corner. And in terms of Sekiro, I'm really glad it's being made. But man, I'm not going to lie. I happily take a new Tenchu game over this title first, and the ideas and wants I've always had for a new Tenchu game using modern tech could for me perhaps turn into one of the best stealth games ever made. Not because of my ideas but because we all love thinking we all love thinking that we can make better video games, but when it comes down to it most of us would suck probably, but I truly believe Tenchu has more promise of delivering a modern and exceptional stealth-based focused game than the likes of say Assassin's Creed and even Metal Gear Solid and Splinter Cell and I'd even throw Hitman in there, but I give props to the older Hitman games, even though I personally can never get into them. They cut out a little corner of their own, so props to Hitman. I personally don't often look for realism in video games. It's never really appealed to me. As I want to enjoy my games, not play something that tries to be like real life. Especially when that translates to gameplay. But what I do enjoy is authenticity. Especially when it comes to games from different cultures. Especially the East for me, and the original Tenchu game. For me, offered that level of authenticity, as well as video game fun that I love. Managing to find the right balance, I feel. Tenchu dealt with stealth, first and foremost, something that historically real ninjas, dealt with. Whilst things like direct combat, were more of a last resort, and ninjas, would use other methods, to achieve their goals, like traps and poisons, something that the Tenchu series promotes as well. With modern day tech and your approach to open world games, I'd love to see the premise of Tenchu return, where you're given a mission, you're placed in a relatively small to medium sized area. It's up to the player to approach the directive multiple ways, as a ninja using stealth. Being able to use the shadows to your advantage, extinguish torches, lanterns, lure your enemies towards you, hide their bodies. Set traps, and when you get to your objective, you should be able to action it in a variety of ways on offer to the player, and and with their restrictive inventory, which they chose before the mission started, adding some great AI, random events, that you need to adjust to, and if you're seeing the guards remain on guard, the whole time throughout the whole mission. Instead of pulling a Metal Gear and eventually going about their business like nothing ever happened. And I strongly believe Tenchu could be a grand return and offer a level of stealth ninja based authenticity that few other games deal with really. And this leads me on to authenticity within games from a cultural standpoint. There are not as many authentic Japanese based games that I'd personally like there to be fair. We've had a recent announcement of Ghost of Tsushima, which I said in a previous video, that I'm very much looking forward to. I hope it lives up to everything that I delivered in the trailer. But before that, off the top of my head, I start going way back to the PlayStation 1, PlayStation 2, Dreamcast kind of eras, with games like Bushido Blade on the PlayStation 1, which tried to take on sword fighting in an authentic way, as best as it could given the technology. And, in all fairness, it probably remains one of the most accurate and authentic when it comes to weapon fighting, real weapon fighting in games. Way the Samurai on the PlayStation 2 was good in its attempt to make you feel like you're a samurai, plus the recreation of feudal Japan, or even Shenmue on the Dreamcast, which in very many ways was trying to be authentic in regards to day-to-day life and Japanese culture of that time. I think so basically the 80s Shenmue, I think it was, yeah. Then, of course, there are other ways of trying to replicate Japanese culture and mysticism, which is vastly more prevalent in video games. With quick examples like Okami, beautiful game there, and Onimusha as examples. But in terms of authenticity, like I said, these games start to stray into the realms of folklore and mysticism. More the fantasy side of things. Which there's nothing wrong with this, of course. I absolutely love it. But it's not what I'm trying to talk about here. Other games that strive for authenticity, as much as possible, are games like the Assassin's Creed series, which, for the most part, done a decent enough job. When it first tried to show off, the sword fighter stuff, it really tried to be, authentic in that approach. But unfortunately, the game, wasn't that great. And also games like Red Dead Redemption and Red Dead Redemption 2, which soon will arrive, seemingly pushing for as much authenticity in regards to American history, as it can. My only problems with these games is that, I find they borderline on boredom for me, where they approach the line of realism a bit too much, leaving you with a gameplay that is essentially associated with that level of realism to some degree, especially with Red Dead Redemption in this example. Tenchu never done that for me. Although the later Tenchus, when compared to the original, started to lose that authenticity, somewhat, going into the realms of more mysticism, etc. I guess it's a fine balance that that's difficult to maintain. I love culture and authenticity being represented in games for me. It really adds to the immersion. Another game, Prince of Persia, Sands of Time, seem to represent that splendor of Persian palaces, really well, whilst throwing in a very cultural sounding soundtrack, which I still love to this day. Cultural authenticity, overall in games, that I feel could certainly be dealt with a lot more. We get, I'm talking about the East here as well. We can discuss other games that approach other cultures and stuff, but. We get elements of it in many games. Games like the Witcher series that uses a lot of European, Nordic and Germanic mythology, etc. Whilst also trying to replicate medieval like towns as cities, or you get scraps of twisted mythology from the likes of say God of War, both in its Greek and Nordic approach. But they can stray too far sometimes. That they essentially become fantasy, and I just mean that in how they approach the mythology, just like the myths themselves. But of course, the way that they actually play, doesn't have many levels of authenticity at all. Not even a Witcher in its sword fighting, which I feel for that series would greatly benefit from real authentic sword fighting. But it does its best for what it is, and it does attempt it in some ways. Throughout most of this, like I said, I mentioned Japanese culture. That's because Eastern culture has a special place in my heart. Like I said, I grew up watching Hong Kong kung fu movies and Japanese samurai movies, plus a wealth of anime and reading manga, which have become ingrained into my very being. But others might look for other cultures to be represented more in games, both of their own likes. So please, let me know your cultural likes in games. Another example, is I love old Aztec, Greek, and Nordic mythology. Like I mentioned earlier. I also love to hear more authentic sounding music in games based off the culture they are trying to represent. One of my favorite video game tracks, of all time is in Diablo 2. It's titled Harem, which try and capture the sound of India and perhaps a little of the Middle East, and they actually use specific instruments to capture that sound, and I find that it adds immensely to the feel of the game. But anyway, I think I'm done here. What are your thoughts on authenticity in games, while still making them playable, as games themselves? Are you a Tenchu fan like me, and would love a new entry in the series, that remains true to its roots? As always, thanks for listening, and I look forward to your comments below. Take care all. Peace.
Echigoya, where have you hidden?
it away! Help me, somebody!
Your bodyguards are dead. And you are next.
My money! My money!
Your greed sickens me. I hope your death is a lesson to others.